In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the forward lower control arm bushing on this Chevy Colorado. This is pressed into the control arm and we will have to remove it for this procedure. This also only applies to the four-wheel drive model because the two-wheel drive model not only has a different control arm, but also a different procedure. After this procedure, you will need an alignment performed on the front end, so let's get started. Let's remove the wheel. If your truck has these center caps, remove them with a pry bar. Maybe it has full hubcaps, use a pry bar for that too, or maybe it has nothing at all. Use a 19mm socket to remove all 6 lug nuts. Now you can remove the wheel. Using a 36mm socket, remove the axle nut. Behind that axle nut is a washer that we're going to have to take out. You can use a magnet to try to walk it off. If you have 2 magnets, that's even better. Pull that off, set it aside. Next, you want to make sure the axle pushes through the hub and is not stuck. This one is fine, it moves. From the backside of the brake caliper, you'll see 2 21mm bolts we have to remove so we can get the brake caliper and bracket assembly off of the front knuckle. Leave this one in a couple turns so I can hold it while we remove the upper. Take both off, and now you can pull the caliper right off the rotor. In order to not hang this caliper by the brake hose, I put a bungee cord around it and tied it up to the frame. Using a trim tool, let's remove the ABS wire off of this upper control arm. Just pop the clips off. Further down on the knuckle, there's an 8mm headed bolt that holds this on. Remove it. Optionally, you can remove the wire from the bracket, but I'd like to just remove the bracket. Use a 21mm socket, remove the mounting nut that holds the tie rod stud on the knuckle. Okay. Usually this doesn't just pop free like this. In my case it did, which is great, but sometimes you're going to have to hit the side of the knuckle with a hammer and the vibrations will pop the stud free. Follow the ABS wire down and you'll see where the sensor goes right through the knuckle. Use an 8mm socket to remove the mounting bolt. With that bolt out, we should be able to pull the sensor right out. Sometimes it does get stuck, in which case you'll have to work it back and forth and pull on it. And there it is. Set it aside safely. Let's undo this upper ball joint, use a 21mm socket, and remove the mounting nut. There we go. Leave the mounting nut a few threads on here so that we can tap the knuckle with a hammer and break these two apart without actually having it fly open and, well, the knuckle coming forward really fast. There we go. You can use a pry bar to pry down on the upper control arm. That will allow you to remove the mounting nut that's still on here. And then using this pry bar, you can gently remove the stud from the knuckle and then bring the knuckle forward, push the axle through. And there we go. Let's remove the lower ball joint mounting nut. Use a 27mm socket. Leave this on a few threads so we can tap the knuckle, separate the stud from the knuckle. Push the knuckle up, remove the mounting nut the rest of the way, pull the knuckle down and off. Let's remove the lower sway bar link stud from the control arm. Use a 15mm socket to undo this. Now, most likely what's going to happen is the stud will start spinning with the nut, but what you can do to start is just try to break this free, and maybe it'll come off. I already sprayed it with rust penetrant. Hopefully that helps. The next thing you can try and do is hold the end of the stud with either a wrench or a socket, but mine is so rusted, can't even find the right size that it's supposed to fit on here. So what I'm going to do is use some locking pliers right here with a wrench on the mounting nut. I'm going to put my wrench on first and then my locking pliers nice and tight. Doing this will allow you to hold the stud while spinning the nut. Now this can only get you so far because eventually the nut will go too far out to where you're not going to have room for the wrench to turn it anymore. I'm pretty much getting to that point here. So what you want to do at that point is transfer the locking pliers from the front to the back over here, where there's a little area where you can hold onto the stud. All right. Additionally, I'm going to apply some heat with an induction heater. If you have a torch, be careful not to melt the boot on the sway bar link if you're reusing it. Take this out. It's time to take tension off the torsion bar, so follow it back until you see this cross member with the torsion bar key and the adjuster bolt. You can take a measurement of this several ways. You can measure ride height before you even start the job, or you can take a measurement of how many threads are between the end of the bolt and where it threads in to this nut that clamps down on the adjuster key. And that's what I'm going to do. You can also count the number of threads, whatever you want to do to take a measurement so you can put it back approximately in the same position as it was before. For me, this is 3 1/8 inches, so that's where I'm going to put it back. Use a 27mm socket and remove this bolt from the bottom. Now this should be able to move around. At the front of the torsion bar where it goes into the control arm, we have to now take this out of this bracket and basically pull it backwards. So vibration and rust penetrant will be our friend here. A lot of times these seize. Let's see what we can do by just tapping it with a hammer. Maybe it'll break free. If not, we'll have to break out the air hammer. All right, it looks like that just spun, which means all we have to do now is push it back. I'm pulling back as I'm hammering. All right. Now back to the front side of the control arm. Let's unbolt the shock absorber. Use an 18mm socket and wrench to take these apart. All right, just leave this here. On the front bolt of the lower control arm, you'll need a 24mm socket for the nut side and an 18mm wrench on the bolt side just to hold it in place. Let's loosen this up. There's a washer here, save that. Pull the bolt out. The rear bolt is right where the torsion bar went in. If you look into that opening, you'll see it. It's a 21mm headed bolt. When doing this, keep one hand on the control arm because it will want to swing down at this point. Finish removing the bolt. And now, get the control arm off the frame. With the control arm in the vise, I'm going to use an air chisel with a chisel bit and peen over the edges on the inner part of the bushing. You want to make sure you go all around and get them nice and squished, basically. Get them out of the way. At this point, I'm going to put my ball joint press on the control arm with a cup going right around this edge right here. That way the cup can actually push all around. If you put a larger cup on, it's actually only going to push on half of the control arm and it's going to want to keep tilting basically. So with that lip out of the way, we're able to push on the sleeve of the control arm. And on this side, the threaded rod of the ball joint press is just pushing straight in to the middle of that bushing. Now it might tear it, it might come out in two pieces. That's okay. As long as it comes out, that's what matters. All right, so here we have the inner part of the bushing. Finish punching that through. And now we can focus on removing this outer sleeve from the control arm. To do that, I'm just going to use an air chisel with a chisel bit, just like I used before, and go right on the edge of it, push it through. All right, well, there it is. So the chisel bit that I used actually split it at the same time. That does help a little bit, although you don't necessarily need to do that as long as you're able to just push it. Even if you don't have a splitter bit, you could just use a regular chisel bit and drive it in sideways. That'll also split it. There it is. Here's my setup for pressing the bushing in. I got the bushing with an adapter here that the press can press onto. Now I will have to swap this out once the bushing is mostly in, but for now this is how we're going to start. Make sure everything is centered, or as centered as you can get it, and let's put some pressure on it. There it is, the bushing is pressed in. Let's bring the control arm up in position. Once you get it lined up, you can start in the bolt for the shock. I have a pull jack here just to help me hold the control arm in place. It's not bolted onto the frame yet, but this will allow me to pivot it on the shock and get everything lined up correctly. I'm not worried about tightening this, I just want to get it in here so it can be properly positioned. Let's get the front bolt lined up. You can use a pry bar to move the control arm around as needed to get this where it needs to be. If you need to tap it in, use a rubber mallet. On the other side, put on the washer and the mounting nut. I'm not tightening this yet, just installing it so it can stay secured. And on the rear, get the bolt through. Start it in. Make sure it's not fully tightened yet. Lift up the control arm so that it can be at right height. It doesn't matter if you have the shock bolt already in or not. You want it up at right height so that you don't damage the new bushings. If you don't do this, they're going to be permanently in a bind and it's going to basically tear them as you drive. Now, right height doesn't necessarily mean the control arm all the way up. That would be up against the bump stop. Just about halfway up, between it being bottomed out on the bottom and bottomed out on the top, which for me is right about here. So let's tighten up those two bolts. Let's bottom out the front bolt. The torque for this one is 112 foot-pounds. My bolt is spinning, so I'm going to have to hold it. $133 foot-pounds for this rear bolt. That's it right there. Looks like the control arm wants to pivot as I'm tightening this. That's totally fine. Once you're sure that everything's tight, let's install the torsion bar. Let's reinstall the shock mounting nut. Use that 18mm socket to tighten it up. Torque this to 52 foot-pounds. If the bolt is spinning, hold it with the wrench. At this point, you can remove your support. In here where the torsion bar goes in, I'm going to add grease. This is hopefully going to prevent things from rusting in the future. We'll keep it nice and lubricated, corrosion-free, especially if this ever has to be removed for any sort of service in the future. Take the torsion bar, make sure the key on the backside stays on it and doesn't fall off. Slide it in the control arm. that all the way in. Perfect. Now let's put the bolt in for the torsion bar at the back. Slide the bottom end through, and let's put on the top piece that sits right on this keyway. Remember your measurement that you took at the beginning, or if you measured ride height, you're going to have to just eyeball this and then put the truck back on the ground and adjust it that way. It doesn't really matter whatever you did. Make sure you put it back exactly how it was before so you can get proper ride height out of it. This will be adjustable at any point, so if you drive it around and you think it needs to be adjusted, adjust it. That's about where I had it before. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's reinstall the sway bar link into the control arm. I put some anti-seize on the threads, that way it's going to be easier to remove this if it ever has to be removed again. Install the mounting nut. Torque this to 32 foot-pounds. Put some anti-seize on the axle spline so that it doesn't get stuck in the hub next time you need to remove it. Try to avoid spraying the threads though. Take the knuckle, put it on the axle and on the lower ball joint, bring it up. Have that lower mounting nut ready. That goes on the ball joint, so you can just secure it when the time comes. All right. With it partially threaded on, you can now let go and we can fully tighten that lower ball joint. Tighten this up with that 27mm socket. And let's torque it to 102 foot-pounds. All right, that's torqued. The knuckle wants to spin, that's totally fine. Now this does not have a cotter pin, it's a locking nut. If for some reason your design has a cotter pin, you're gonna wanna put that cotter pin through only once the slot lines up on the castle nut. And if it does not line up, always tighten or continue tightening and never loosen in order to get these to line up. Now what has to happen is the knuckle with the lower control arm have to go up while we pull down on the upper control arm. So I have a pry bar going over this upper control arm onto the frame. That way I'm able to pry down. And then on the lower control arm, I have a pull jack here that I'm gonna potentially raise up on. And if you're on the ground, you could just use a floor jack and press this whole assembly up. So let's put a little bit of pressure on this. And then come down with the upper. Have that mounting nut ready so that as soon as you put this together and it goes through, be very careful of any pinch points. Thread that nut on and let go. Now let's tighten up this mounting nut. It's tight right there. If while you're tightening, the whole stud spins, you're going to use a 6mm Allen socket, stick it right in the middle, hold the stud or spin the stud while you're either turning the nut or holding the nut to make sure that that doesn't happen. 74 foot-pounds is the torque for this mounting nut. All right, that's tight. Now if you have a castle nut with a cotter pin, make sure you continue tightening until you line up the slot in order to properly lock that in. Mine is just a locking nut. Remove any support that you may have installed here. Let's reinstall the ABS sensor. Put it right in the hole in the knuckle. Make sure it bottoms out by hand. You don't want to push it in with this bolt through the little mounting tab because it will break if it gets stuck. Start in the bolt and with the help of an 8mm socket or wrench, tighten it up. That's bottomed out. Just give it a little bit extra. That is all you want to tighten it. It can break very easily since it's so small. And let's reattach the ABS wire bracket up on top of the knuckle. Put the 8mm headed bolt in. That's bottomed out, just a little bit extra, about 1/8 of a turn at most. Resecure the ABS wire on the control arm. There's one retainer on the side and one up on top. Put your tie rod stud back through and install the mounting nut. Let's bottom it out. Torque this to 33 foot-pounds. Take your caliper and slide it over the rotor. Have your bolts ready, and let's start them in. Snug these up. Torque these to 133 foot-pounds. Install the washer for the axle nut as well as the axle nut itself, and let's bottom it out. I'm using an air impact, however, when I tighten it, I'm not going to go all the way with it. I'm just going to bottom it out, get it snug. The torque is going to be 191 foot-pounds, and it's important that you tighten this properly. I backed it off a little bit, so let's torque it. To stop the hub from spinning, I'm going to put a pry bar between the lug studs. Once again, 191 foot-pounds. That's it right there. This is a locking nut, so no need to put anything over it. Let's get the wheel back on. Reinstall all 6 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern. And also in a cross pattern, we're going to torque them to 103 foot-pounds. A 103 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. Double check them all. And whatever style hubcap or center cap your truck had, if it had it, put it back on. Now take it for a road test and don't forget to get an alignment.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.